Welcome to That RPG Podcast, where every great adventure starts with a single idea.
I'm DQ, your friendly neighborhood GM.
I'm Courtney Staples, and America is great.
And I'm Johnny Law, and they will not break me. So yeah, it's been an interesting 2026 so far, but we're not going to talk about that because love is in the air, and we don't care. So we're not going to talk about that either. The love is gone, folks. The love is gone. But we're here still. We're gonna have some fun, and we're gonna talk some RPG. And, we're gonna have an awesome guest on in the next episode that we're gonna try to cajole to do a venture hook with us. But otherwise, we got a dear GM to face today, and I think this comes on the tails of lately. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about catching our shorts, catching our TikToks, and our
Yeah, we've got the Facebook, we've got the TikTok, the Instagram,
the grams of
and and the YouTube.
All right, so 4 things out there in the social world that we are now influencing. Sorry, one sec. Sorry. Because of this, I've had a bunch of people run it that aren't in the TTRPG circles, but are in adjacent circles with me or concentric or I don't know. Help me. I'm not.
What are the Venn diagramming?
Venn diagram. Yeah, there's a
Like the overlapping concentric
the little
circle.
What's it mean?
What's that glory hole called?
What's that little called? When you do the thing with when they overlap?
Where it overlaps. I think it's just the overlap.
Is there a word for it?
I'm pretty sure it's just overlap. Let me.
Venish.
Venish.
It's the Venn. It is the Venn.
When the tips touch.
It's
docking.
The intersection. The overlap or the intersection. The docking works too, probably.
It's docking. So the docking point. Wow, where the did you just end up? Anywho, what I was trying to get at is a bunch of people have been asking me, what the hell are TTRPGs? What are they? Like board games? Are they what are you guys doing when you're playing D&D? Like, what is this world?
We're not molesting children, I can tell you that.
That is damn. At least not
very, very accurate.
In real games. I don't know about Fate. I never played that shit, but so it's called Fate?
Fatal. Fate's different.
Could you imagine if Fate is about molesting children? It's right there. I got it.
No, Fate is okay. Fatal's the one that.
Fatal's, yeah.
There's a lot of holes in that one.
You make your own holes.
Docking holes. Yeah.
God damn it, DQ. But so I haven't explained this, and it's funny, like how you explain, like do you go into the talk about the narrative aspects? Do you talk about the mechanics? Do you relate to video games or board games, whatever? And I think that's it's just keeps coming up in that and conversation. And I'm kind of, dear GM, how do I explain? No, that's not my part.
So for our Dear GM this time, we're going to try and answer this question. What makes a role-playing game a role-playing game? And how are RPGs different than board games? Now, this is like the question, isn't it? Like, even trying to explain, I feel like just like what you're saying, there's one way to explain it to people who don't know what they are, which you can probably get off in a paragraph with a few analogies. But then there's a way of trying to explain it to people who play RPGs so we can actually distinguish our games in an academic way from other games. That's the hard one, I think.
I would even say the halfway point between that too is explaining to someone that's a gamer or that plays, but there's like the how do I explain to Nana what I'm doing on Thursday nights versus how do I explain to my like Call of Duty bro versus how do we how do I talk to a Pathfinder player about how the system I play is different and what distinguishes but still likens them.
I think that's a good way to approach it. So I think each of us can tackle one version of that. Like I'm interested in the academic version because since I'm deep in the weeds and trying to build my system and make it different, right, than the other ones that we're all dealing with. I'm always dealing with these theoretical distinctions. Courtney, you play a lot of board games too. So I think that's an opportunity to get into the nitty-gritty. And then John, like you're the social glue for us. So it's like you're the one who can explain this to those 3 categories in an elevator pitch.
So how do you want to approach this?
Why don't before I try to give some academic nonsense, what are our impressions? Like what are the ways that you say to other people that you don't know what RPG, but what do you explain? What do you say to them normally?
I've recently leaned into, even when talking about 5e, because I think the way you and I play 5e is still collaborative storytelling. I think that's how I bring it up. It's a bunch of people getting around together. There's one person usually that is kind of more the referee or the arbitrator. But in general, though, it's a bunch of people making fantasy happen off of a loose script or prompts, I should say. And then I also will say then there's like, mechanical elements into a video game or a board game that come into play. But unlike those, I mean, I guess there are RPGs video games and there are RPG board games of sorts, but like they are more near and dear to your character and their identity, so to speak. And so it's not just like, I get this laser upgrade or something like that. It feels a lot more than that because it's something that you're trying to build and mold and establish.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in the same vein when I try to describe it as quickly as possible. I said something like, everyone's going to play a character like an improv, and there's a referee or main storyteller, and we're all going to create what happens together. But there's rules that we follow from these books. So we use dice and there are books involved. Because usually they think, oh, is there a board? Or, what's the objective of the game? And that's where it gets into the weeds. But that's where I would start normally.
Yeah, I usually lean into the collaborative storytelling part and like the live group improv aspect, since that's usually the stuff that I care more about than the mechanics. But yeah, when questions about like objectives and like winning and all that come up, I say that it's generally collaborative, like across the board. You're working towards your character goals or group goals. Like there's kind of a blend of different objectives going on.
Now this is coming back to the academic principles again. For me, then it becomes a question of once you're past that and you're trying to really explain to someone how it's different, how do you distinguish RPG games, tabletop RPGs from things like video games, computer RPGs, board games, and improv? Because improv is very similar to RPGs. So I have found for me that there are these 5 principles. And the 5th one is my own that I made up. So people will disagree about that one. But the other 4, I think an RPG will have these together in some degree. Maybe it'll have less of one and more of the other. But when you add all these together, suddenly you have an RPG and you don't have an improv game, a board game, or a video game. So I'll just really briefly touch on these because I think we can play with these. The first thing I think that's really important with an RPG is when you play an RPG, it's structured as a conversation. There's no RPG I can think of that doesn't do it this way, in the sense that the way we play it is not necessarily moving things around the board, even though there are BTTs, there are maps and things, but we are having a conversation with each other. And the moves we make are done through speaking to each other. So that's the first principle. Our play is a conversation. The second one is very straightforward. It's the role-playing part. We adopt the roles of fictional characters. So the way we interact with the game is that we are playing through these characters. Now, the characters might be not individuals. Something like, for example, The Quiet Year, it might be we're playing as the world itself to some extent. So, but we're not playing ourselves. The third one, in an RPG, we have meaningful choice, meaning we can do otherwise. So in a board game, you can't do otherwise. And in a video game, you can't do otherwise. I can't decide in a video game if I'm playing Final Fantasy VII to quit playing Final Fantasy VII and in the game open a farm and sell beets. I can't decide to romance the princess if the system doesn't allow me to do that programmatically. I can't decide to pee on the villain and laugh at him. Those are just not things I can do. I don't have meaningful choice. Even though I might have decision trees and dialogue trees and such, but that's not real. Those are structured choices. Same thing with a board game. Like I can only do the things the board game allows me to do. And the 4th one, before we get to my bonus 5th one, and this one's more nitty gritty. It's that in most RPGs, and it's not all of them, the rules that are actually written down for the game model what our characters do. The rules are there to resolve things that we're doing in the fiction as our characters, as opposed to rules modeling what the story does. Now, there are RPGs where both happen, right? So like in a PBTA game, you might have a rule that's about what happens in the narrative as opposed to what my character is specifically doing. Well, we may have some of that, and we have some of these mechanics that have to do with what's happening in the fiction. So to get deeper into that, like I might have hero points and I might accrue hero points because we're doing cool things in the scene, or the decisions I'm making as a player for the story is cool. So my GM's like, oh, you're going to get a hero point. You can use that later to influence the narrative. My character doesn't know what a hero point is and has no way of knowing how much hero points it has. And that mechanic only has to do with influencing the narrative. So role-playing games have to have a way for the rules to model what happens that the characters are doing. Otherwise, I mean, it's more like an improv game, where the rules in an improv game have to do with the way the game is structured and the joke we're trying to pull off than it is what my improv character is actually going to do. Like an improv game, I'm not going to have a rule for how much damage my finger gun does, but I might have a rule for the audience is going to change the theme every 10 minutes and we got to switch the story around. So that's number 4, which I tend to call the game mechanics model the actions the characters make. And then my bonus one has to do with that objective of play that we talked about. Like, we play a board game because there's a defined objective to win. We play an improv game, presumably sometimes, because we want to make the audience laugh. Or we're trying to accomplish something in terms of our improv. And in a video game, we play because we want to beat the game, and there's a defined objective. But that's not true in an RPG. In an RPG, I think we play because we're trying to fulfill whatever narrative goals our characters have. So if I've defined my character as being a thief who wants to go from rags to riches, the objective of play for me is to achieve that narrative by playing the game. And I think most RPGs try to do this, even the ones that are very OSR where I'm distanced from my character. In those cases, if I'm playing a thief and I don't really have a narrative in mind, usually the game is about me accruing wealth and riches and fame. And so the narrative goal of my character is wealth and riches and fame. And I'm playing the game so he can do that. So that's my 5th one, is narrative fulfillment. So play is a conversation. We adopt the role of characters in the fiction. We can do otherwise. We have actual freedom, meaningful choice. The game mechanics model what our characters do in the fiction. And the objective of play is to fulfill the narrative ambitions of our characters. I think if you use those as a 5-point tool, you can distinguish games from RPG.
I think that I don't disagree with any of that. I think that is a pretty much all-inclusive. I'm gonna have to let it simmer a little bit and try to think if there, like, what else it could be missing. But I feel like it. I don't know, Courtney, do you agree with this? That seems pretty.
I think so. Like, to be honest, I'm generally not into these like very philosophical, what makes an X this thing kind of discussions, but I do agree that it makes sense for this. Yeah.
It's kind of like when we have like ethos, right? Like, it's a tool. Like, what I'm doing good or evil for my character, right? So it's a tool. So if I take a game like, let's say Dread, some purists will say, well, Dread's not an RPG, but we know Dread is an RPG because it's advertised as one and it plays like one, right? The weird thing about Dread is there's a Jenga tower, and whenever I do something risky, I have to pull from this tower, and if the tower collapses, I die. So what is it violating here? It's still a conversation.
I don't know enough about Dread. Why is it a conversation?
You talk to each other when you're running the game. Like, you're still playing the game by talking to each other. Like, I ask the GM X or I ask the player X or Y.
Okay.
We go back and forth.
It's not just Jenga.
No. The Jenga is for when it's like rolling a die is a Jenga move, right?
Oh, okay.
So then, like, we're still adopting roles of characters. We still have choices, right? We're making choices in the game. It's just resolved through that block. But then where it gets weird is the game mechanics aren't necessarily modeling what my character is doing, because I'm pulling this block every time any of my character does anything risky. So there's some distance. So that one, it's a little wiggly, but it has all this other stuff. And presumably you're playing the game because we want to do whatever our characters were designed to do. So it's a way to measure the game.
Yeah, in that it doesn't it relies on player skill, the act of actually pulling that block, as opposed to a die roll, which is luck and not skill oriented.
And there's other ways to look at that too. Like with a die roll, if I have a fireball, right, the more powerful I am, the more dice I roll in D. That makes it closer to what's happening in the fiction, in the same. But I could have, for example, I could have wealth, right? And maybe like wealth is represented as like 3 degrees. But my character still knows that I'm rich if I have 3rd degree. It's just abstracted. So that's also still related to the fiction. So I think of it more of like a way to like test.
Have you played Dread?
I haven't played Dread. It's all based on what I've read.
Just looks stupid to me. Sorry. I'm gonna say it. I don't know. Wow. I mean, I'm speaking out turn here, but I just like I don't think a Jenga tower involved. Unless it's about a Jenga tower. Like, if it's about a Jenga tower, it's about us like taking apart like the Tower of Babel or something. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, and your reaction comes from you want the rules to be closer to what your character's doing, like in terms of how it's mapping to the fiction. So you have less tolerance for it. I also have less tolerance for it.
Yeah, which we found out definitely. I mean, you obviously knew for a while, but we found out when we were down in Pennsylvania recently at an Airbnb playing board games all weekend, and just certain games were not really vibing with Daniel. And it was surprising because in my mind, it's like, you created this whole system, like you've developed this whole thing on your own. You're obviously like very intelligent when it comes to mechanical things, but you just weren't getting into these board games. And then we ended up talking more about it over the course of the weekend, and it was definitely interesting to hear your point of view about like you need there to be like a creative problem solving aspect, basically, which isn't always the case in a board game.
What board games was it?
We were playing a bunch. Most.
Well, I mean, a good example. What's the one that was a sci-fi one where you're
The
like,
one where we were exploring Advantage.
The more I played it, the more I liked it because I was starting to map the rules to what was happening in the fiction. So what you're saying there is, for me, in an RPG, the rules are grounded in the actions I take. Like they follow after my decision. So if I'm playing an RPG, I want to do X. Then the rules kick in to resolve it. If I'm playing a board game, I have to look at what things I can do first. And then those are the things I'm allowed to do, so they trigger. So basically my intent comes after I choose a mechanic. So that's where I get tripped up. I want to be able to do whatever and then have the rules kick in. Whereas when I'm playing a board game, I've got to look at all the options are available. And the choice I make has to be based on the optimal solution because that's how you play. That's how you win. And I'm not a rational person, so I'm not good at like optimizing.
So I will argue that like not all board games are 100% about optimizing. Like I'm not really an optimizer myself, and I definitely do worse at those games where it's like you need to be pro at like making an engine or something. I'm not great. Like Wingspan back here, if you compare my stats with my boyfriend's of win rates, like he's like 90% win rate to my abysmal win score because I don't have the mind of building engines that like do 50,000 things in your turn and stuff. It's just harder for me to conceptualize that. But there are other board games where it's like a bit more open-ended and you can kind of dive into different strategies and also the social aspect.
I remember there was a Star Trek game I played with my friend Karen a long time ago, and her husband was a super optimizer strategy guy, right? And in this game, he was playing like Klingons or something, and they were just like very powerful and tactical. And you started different sides of the map. So it was us as the Federation, and he was Klingons. And me and her were just terrible players. We're not optimizers at all, but we're like, oh, you can explore planets in this and get points? Let's do that. So we spent the entire time avoiding his ships and just exploring planets and getting points for exploring. And by the time his entire armada arrived, which would have utterly destroyed us instantly, we explored the last planet and won the game. So it's like, absolutely. If there's other ways to get to the objective, I'm totally into it because now it's grounded in what I want to do fictionally.
Yeah, that's like very much like one of my favorite games that I don't get to play very often because it takes like 8+ hours to play is Twilight Imperium. And it's this really intense, like just long intergalactic game where there's multiple ways to accrue points to win. And it's very complicated. And normally that wouldn't be my thing, but because there are so many avenues and approaches that you can take, and because you can like get the social aspect of like kind of trading with other players and like getting on their side and manipulating them and spotting like little actions that you can take to gradually do things around the edges, and that definitely appeals to me. And I did similar one game where I was not in a great position to win, and then I noticed that I could just keep repeating this one tactic turn after turn and keep getting a point every turn, and unless somebody stopped me, but nobody wanted to stop me because it would mean sacrificing some of their power. So I just kept doing that until I won. So yeah.
Did you guys play crossbow catapults?
Oh, I love that one.
We did, yes. Tyler and I were not good.
I grew up with that game, the original. And so then I found those like, oh, there's like cards and there's special discs and there's like, I loved it. I had such a good time with that.
And it had some, again, that's a weird one where it's like, I actually enjoyed the player skill aspect of it.
See, that's one where Tyler was not liking it because of the player skill.
Yeah. And normally I don't like player skill, but in that one it was kind of fun because there was the player skill part of it, sure. But then also like, I like the idea of being these little dwarves and we're trying to like free our dwarf guy and we're trying to like knock apart their castle and there was all these ways to do it. That I was into because again, it was more grounded in the fiction. Yeah.
Goblins are cooler, just saying.
But I never got to play those.
Yeah, I didn't get to play dwarves. Chris was holding tight to the dwarves with the 2 games I saw him play and the one I played against him. But yeah, no, that's a good game. I love that the added element to that I do feel like it's not role playing at all, but it's definitely like there is that dwarf versus goblin. Yeah, you get a little bit more into it. But I used to like back in the day played Access and Allies at a bar on Sunday nights. This bar I worked at, and Sundays were pretty slow. So we'd take the corner of the bar, and the owner, myself, definitely one other bartender. We usually had like a rotating seat, and then the other bartender's friend, who was just a board game nerd, whatever. but we would all sit and we would do accents and we would like drink whatever country or whatever power we were representing. And like, so we like, brought in RPG elements to it, but still it wasn't an RPG because of the 5 pillars that you speak of.
Yeah, that's a great example. Like you're able to role play in a lot of these board games. So like in Access Allies, you role played, but where it gets disqualified is you didn't really have meaningful choice because you could only do what the game lets you do. Play wasn't really conducted as a conversation by the rules. You might have had conversations with each other, but the way you play is making moves, right?
Or following a set steps.
And I mean, it could be argued that maybe the game mechanics model what your armies are doing. That's possible. But it's not necessarily like the heart of how the game works. So it has it touches on at least a couple of them, but doesn't have most of them.
It hits that docking point, where
you're only a little. Just the tip is in there.
Just a couple of. It's not all.
Right.
Not all
it's
5.
not all the way in.
Not all 5
Not
members.
all crammed
All
together.
the-
all the members.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, to continue with board games, we came up with this scale of like purely optimized and purely problem solving. My boyfriend is on the very optimized side. He doesn't really care about like the flavor of stuff. He's fine with like completely abstract games. Whereas you're on like over here where you need to have this like connection to the narrative in some way. And I'm kind of like in the middle-ish.
I was a part of this conversation, but if I may, it's the optimization versus the experience.
Immersion, I think, versus optimization, right?
I think immersion's something else too, though. Like I feel like, because I feel like you could still enjoy the experience and do like, not playing to win, so to speak. Not you're trying to lose, but and not be like into it deep, but like watching it from afar, from outside, like not be fully immersed, but. At the same time, like it's different than like the optimizer doesn't mind losing to a better optimized opponent. That just makes them try to work harder. Whereas the experience leaning person doesn't mind losing to a game that was just fun. And like everyone's like, oh yeah, that was great. Like, whereas the optimizer might be like, if they got curbed or they felt people weren't following the rules, people weren't spending their MP on their things, why am I looking at everyone's sheet, making sure that you're doing, oh, sorry.
No, but I mean, speaking to the whole following the rules thing, that's another thing that you and I talked about, Daniel, about like sticking to the rules as written or going off doing your own homebrew kind of thing, and how like in a similar way, like RPGs, you can have that happen with board games. Like everybody's probably had this experience with Monopoly where you grew up playing it a certain way with like free parking gets you money and all that stuff, and the games last like 5 hours and sucks. But then as an adult, you look at the rule book and it's like, oh, you can like auction off properties as soon as you land on them. Like the game should really just like go fast and somebody should win pretty quickly. But that's just not how anybody learned because we're not reading the rule books as 8-year-old kids, and our parents are just winging it. So it's kind of similar with like approaching RPGs too, where there are some GMs who do it really loose and essentially just homebrew. Whereas there are others like you who are very much like, no, we have to stick to the rules. And there's definitely been times when like you've made a call that fits the rules and it's like, God damn it, Daniel, I just really want to do this cool thing. And I sit there being all like frumpy and stuff. But then later it's like, okay, like it makes sense. And especially putting it in the context of like comparing it to board games with my boyfriend and I are very much about following the rules in board games to the point where we probably piss off other people at the table because we're like, can we just consult the rules for a minute here? And the reason that we do that is because we just want to play the game as it's meant to be played, as it's actually balanced. Because if you start like messing with the rules, that can throw off the balance a lot. It can mess up people's choices in the game. It can like completely destroy strategies that you're going for and stuff like that. So we might sound like we're being whiny assholes, but we have a reason for it.
Well, and I think it's important to recognize that on the board game side, holding fast to the rules as written generates the experience that was intended, right? And on the role-play game side, the same is true. Like if the GM holds fast to the way the rules were intended and you execute and defend the rules, you're getting closer to the experience that the game is supposed to generate. And so there's overlap there. The difference, of course, becomes that it comes down to optimization again, right? So in the board game, typically, I'm trying to use the rules to make an optimal choice. Whereas in an RPG, because the goal is to fulfill the narrative intent of the character, you might have to make a non-optimal choice. Like, for example, I might have to decide to surrender to the bad guy because my character is a coward. and that fulfills his narrative goal. But that's not optimal from the mechanical point of view. But it actually is. That's the weird part.
Yeah. And kind of carrying that over, it can be very frustrating in board games when an opponent doesn't make an optimal choice. Like they do something that just benefits another player, for example. So it creates this kingmaker scenario, which is always sort of a bummer. It made a lot more sense the more we talked about it, and made me understand your point of view of like really sticking to the rules in your game more, and made me appreciate that more, definitely.
Well, my frustration when I'm playing a board game, it might seem, for example, for me, when people point out, oh, you can't do that rule, I'm not frustrated because I can't do the rule. I'm frustrated because I can't remember that I can't do it. So for me, it ends up being that I'm trying to juggle all of these moves I can make. And because I'm not an optimizer I'm not the best optimizer. In my head, I'm like, I could make this move and A will lead to C and then C will lead to D. Then I go down this rabbit hole and I get stressed thinking about that because I know my turn is here and I need to figure this out so people can play. But it's like, it's the stress of having to make that optimal choice that frustrates me, not so much that we're trying to stick to the rules, because I do want to stick to the rules.
Right. No, it makes sense. Like when we were playing that other game that you weren't wild about, Spirit Island, which is, to be fair, very complicated. It's very heavy, very involved. There's a lot to remember.
There's so many times you've explained the same rule and I'm like, I still don't understand this. That's the other thing, the abstraction of it also throws me off. That's why I don't like PTA games, because they tend to abstract a lot of things away from the fiction.
In Spirit Island, for example, like it can get very thinky where like you have these actions that you want to do one thing this turn, but also to prevent something from happening next turn and potentially to stop things from happening like turns in the future. And it can get very overwhelming. And sometimes you just kind of have to say like, I'm going to play my turn and hope for the best, because I can't spend the next 30 minutes like trying to optimize my turn.
Like I would sit there as soon as my turn was over. I would then spend the entire time until it was my turn again, trying to figure out, okay, I don't remember if I could even make this move. I don't want to ask them for the 7th time how this works, because I look like an idiot. And it's like, and I don't remember what the other move I could make is. So it's like, as the kind of player I am, I'm like, well, then I don't want to make a move.
I swear it's a fun game, everybody. You should try. It's great. It's great. One of my favorites. It's cooperative.
You mentioned too that there was a version of it that gives you more explanation of the lore.
A little bit. So there's actually a digital version of it that you can play on like Steam, probably elsewhere too, but it automates a lot of the rules, which definitely makes it a bit quicker. It's big for that. And it also, like, when a round ends, there is a little pop-up that says like years pass, which does kind of reinforce in the fiction, like, okay, years of time are passing, like the invaders are actually spreading out and building their settlements, the spirits are growing stronger and so on. So it lends it to like a bit more of having that narrative like constantly in your head, as opposed to looking at a board just being like, okay, turn's over, let's.
And you can almost reason your way to how it should work. Like I love games, even board games, where I don't necessarily know the rule, but based on the fictional context, it should look like this. And then when I look at the rule, okay, that's actually how it works. Because then you have a reasoning and fictional reasoning that reinforces the mechanical reasoning. And that goes back to how I try to design spells. I want you to fall back on the fictional reasoning for how magic works, as opposed to have to look up something and find the specific rule. And usually when you do look it up, you're like, okay, that makes sense because this is how it's supposed to logically work in the larger explanation. And when games do that, which I think is hard to do because it tends to mean sacrificing abstraction by inserting more like lore and flavor that imitates the rules.
But yeah, in general, like there are some pretty solid digital adaptations of board games that do streamline stuff. So you're not the one like having to keep in mind these 50 different rules of how different pieces function, but the game kind of does it for you. Like another one that I've heard good things about is the digital version of Gloomhaven, which we played the physical version, and it's really fun, but it's beast and it takes a long time to set up. But the digital, I guess, is just like you jump in and start playing. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah, the physical versions can just be like clunky, especially if you're not really used to that sort of thinking, if you're not the type to like sit down and actually read through a rule book.
And it's helpful too when you play a lot of games where it's like digital versions of them, where like you try to make a move, but the system won't let you because it shows you. That helps me because then I don't have to know. Like I know I can't do that. Okay, I'm gonna focus.
Flip through a book.
Yeah. No, that's even come up for us with Spirit Island. Like playing the digital version, we'll be like, oh wait, that's a valid move. Like you've been doing that wrong. Yeah, like good to know for when we play the physical version.
I think like the big hard draw with me, and like the reason why I love RPGs or tabletop RPGs so much is exactly what DQ was saying. Just the community aspect of the fact that there are rules to follow, but they do reflect how your character works, and you can lean into that. But then also the things that Courtney loves about them, and the creativity and building and writing your own stories, so to speak. That's awesome. The one thing I hate as an optimizer, as I hate chess, because of the whole fact that it's just there's like really no unorthodox things to do in chess. Like it's all so get in the comments, tell me I'm wrong. That's fine. There's all sorts of gambits and things to do. And then it just becomes a matter of like, it's like a thing with magic. Like it's like, I'm going to do this, so I know exactly how it's going to end. So I'm going to try to counter with this. Okay, well now I'm changing it to this, and and it's not like this. Like the give and take is not.
There's no creativity in it. I mean, and again, we're probably get blasted, but in the sense that there's no creativity in this, I think this is fair to say, because machines play chess, and I'm talking machine like ML machines, not like the sort of machines that we have now that actually can do creative things. So like machines play chess in the sense, and I like chess in the sense that the way they play it is they map all possible moves in a way that a human can't. And so they literally switch between strategies when they see the board in a certain state, which is exactly what you're saying. So it's not a matter of creativity. It's a matter of being able to reason your way ahead to all those moves.
It's like state recognition.
Yes, it's like understanding the board, knowing what the correct move from there is. Whereas in more creative board games and in improv and in RPGs, even in video games to some extent, you can do something creative that has an unexpected outcome as a part of your strategy.
But like from my understanding of Go, like I think amount of things you do is so insanely large because they're all the same pieces. They're not individual. Like at least chess, like things get narrowed into like, well, this is pieces. You always start with the same pieces, and they start in the same position. And they work the same way. So that's whereas Go, it's like this. It's just all the pieces are the same. It's just how you then play them. Like I feel like that adds way more complexity, which often opens up for some unorthodox things, more unorthodox things. I know in chess there are things you can there are gambits, there are things that you can make people try to like they think they're winning, and you're like, oh, but they still have a name and they're still a thing. It's not like that's my rant about chess.
Do you want to talk more about video games versus?
Yeah, we should talk about video games. There's TTRPGs.
Or just RPGs.
Yeah, in the video game world, they just call them RPGs, right?
Yeah, just call RPGs.
Yeah.
And that's what most people think when I say like, oh, I work as a part-time RPG designer. I have to say TTRPG.
And the TTRPG people, we call them CRPGs. Let's use our tests against it.
Baldur's Gate 3 would probably be, or like the old Fallout or something.
Fallout, or like the Morrowind and all those like I feel like that kind of stuff is more, like I feel, although Final Fantasy does have RPG elements to it, but it's not.
So it's interesting because I get what John is saying, because to me there's a big difference between like I feel like JRPGs especially are very like they can be pretty linear and maybe less choice based.
I'm playing a character. I'm not playing my character is my thing.
Yes.
Oh, because there's less customization. So you're saying like I'm playing Cloud rather than I'm playing a character I built in Baldur's Gate 3.
I can't wrap my head around when people talk about Zelda as if it's an RPG, because it's like you're just some guy running around with
That's like an action RPG. It's not even an RPG.
It's just very action oriented.
Adventure. So just to recap what you guys are saying, there's JRPGs, which is like there's a set kind of character I'm playing and I customize them, but I'm playing Cloud, right? Versus Baldur's Gate, where I don't have a set character, I'm making one that's in the story that I'm playing. That's the RPG.
Yeah. And there are other characters that are set, but that's fine. Or Courtney's favorite.
Disco Elysium, which that one it's very close to a TTRPG in that there's a ton of text choices to choose from, a ton of directions. It's very open, but I mean, it does still have limits. Like you can't do literally anything. You can do a lot of weird shit, but you can't do literally anything.
Well, let's test it then. Let's do this one, because I played like a few minutes of it.
Didn't you like die right away or something?
I did some dumb stuff. I think I died in the first like minute, and then I did something dumb. I like stuck my hand in a fan or something.
Yeah, you reached up to the fan and had a heart attack. I think that can happen at the start.
I got what I deserved. So Disco Elysium, play as conducted every conversation. Not exactly. I mean, there is a conversation with the machine. So if we want to consider the machine itself, the game system, as the game master, I am having a conversation with NPCs and with the game master in the sense that I'm making dialogue choices. So we can say to some degree, sure. But it's not a conversation in the same way as like an improv conversation with humans. It's just computer mediated. Do I adopt the role of a character in fiction? Yes. So I'm that guy, right? Or I'm in Baldur's Gate 3, I'm making a character and I'm adopting their role. Where it falls down, which is what we said, is meaningful choice. And I think until we have something like a fully LLM powered RPG, we'll never have meaningful choice, because at the end of the day, my choices are structured by the limits of the system. And that's true in Baldur's Gate, no matter how many weird things I can do in this game or in the old Final Fantasies, more than anything, because those are very rigid. And then the game mechanics model the actions characters take. Yes, behind the scenes, the rules of the game are modeling what my little virtual character is doing. And then I think my fifth one's important here, because am I fulfilling the goals of my character? I could. So for example, I think in Disco Elysium, I can, because the psychology changes based on the choices I make. So I might be able to be the evil guy. If my goal going into it is I want to play an evil dude, I could potentially do that. Baldur's Gate 3, absolutely. I mean, I used to do that in the old Baldur's Gate 2 games. You can't really do that in a JRPG. Those tend to not. They kind of may have different endings, but they generally aren't that sophisticated, as far as I know. So it meets a lot of those choices. I think it hinges on meaningful choice. Once you have a video game that's truly LLM driven, you've now replaced the GM who's serving as a decision engine with the LLM. And if the game engine, the world, can alter itself enough based on those decisions I make, I might be able to say, I'm just going to farm. And then the game, being sophisticated enough, might say, well, here's a farmland. Now all my NPCs are going to respond to you as if you're farming. Now you have meaningful choice. And suddenly you now have an RPG that is totally digital. So I think that's possible.
I haven't played it yet, but there is one that I've heard really good things about, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, that was fairly recent, and apparently that one is very open-ended. Like the first one, you could kind of follow a set story, but it sounds like in this one, you're just like some guy in the Middle Ages, and if you want to just wander off and like become a gravedigger or something, like you can. If you want to go apprentice with a blacksmith, you can sort of do whatever. Again, I haven't played it, so I'm not sure, but I'm also sure that there are limitations because it can't make up everything.
That's what Fable always like wanted to, that's what they always were trying to say that they're doing, and it's never the case. And like
this time though, it's gonna happen this time.
It's gonna happen this time. Pre-order. But like what DQ is saying though is like until it's actually you have AI running it and they can, much like this book series that I stumbled. Perhaps you viewers have heard of it. It's very niche. It's called Dungeon Crawler Carl. No one's heard of it except for me.
Totally no.
Not at all late to the show whatsoever. But no, in that there's an AI that's how it works. It runs and adapts to it and creates the game. So it is a true RPG, the world that they're living in. No spoilers, or not many spoilers, whatever, you figure it out. But so like you say though, this Kingdom Come, I don't know, I've heard of it, I don't know too much about it, but it reminds me of back in the day of being bored and really stoned and playing Grand Theft Auto. And what we would do is we would decide like, all right, and like there was like a model you could like switch like what your character was and make them random NPCs and be like, oh cool, I'm a mailman. And we would go and like literally try to deliver mail, like pretend we're delivering. And so in that sense though, it was now an RPG because we had rules we had to follow, but we could do whatever we wanted because the win condition we were making ourselves. So I feel like there are ways to turn pre-existing thing into RPGs. Also similarly is when I play something like Dark Tower by myself. I role play the shit out of that in my head. I put on music. I make up a story where my guys come, because whatever. Once again, probably super stoned, and just and I'm not. No one else is like competing with me or any of them competing against the game. But like at that point, I don't think the Return to Dark Tower is an RPG. They did make an RPG, but in the game when you're playing with a group of people, it's not meant to be an RPG. But I think in some ways you can turn it into one.
Yeah, if you adjust how the game functions, then you can. Like what you were doing in your mailman GTA is you were introducing new rules about what you're able to do in order to give yourself that objective, the narrative goal, and you're also like, even though you're limited by what you can do in the video game, you're kind of deciding, well, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z instead. So you're adding on to the game and modifying it to achieve it.
No, and to speak to the Dark Tower role-playing aspect, like you could definitely do something like that with Spirit Island as well, where it's you could, if you wanted to, like actually role play the spirits that you're playing and actually like act like what they would do while murdering these conquistadors who are invading your land. And granted, it might not be like purely optimal for the game, but you could still do that.
But I think that goes back to your 5 pillars, though, TQ, because in my one example, there is no conversation happening as I'm playing by myself. But that would also apply to something like, was it Gloomhaven?
Gloomhaven. It's like a dungeon crawling game.
Yeah,
much.
but you can play by yourself, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Basically, you pick a character out of a select few that you have at the start, and you get like an objective. I think you have a secret objective of your own, and then you get secret ones for each dungeon crawl scenario, pretty much, and you work through a campaign. So each board that you set up is its own. Could be like an actual dungeon, a cave that you're exploring, somebody's house, whatever. Like, and it lays it all out for you in this like book where you read the script essentially, and like that sets up your adventure, and you go through it and you play. It's like turn-based, and it is very tactical though, like extremely.
Sounds like it lacks meaningful choice. Like it just seems like the only problem is that you're limited by what it allows you to do in the board game. But otherwise, it seems like it fits all the other goals. I mean, I would quibble on 5 because the narrative goals are defined by the cards of those characters, right? So like if I want to play someone who is, I don't know, a painter prostitute, right? Like there's not a lot of space for me to make that happen.
I don't think there's a role for that. I'm like, sorry.
No. but I mean, the spirit of it might be there. I mean, what I would also say is we're very close to the idea of having a fully digitally mediated RPG being possible. Like it's here, guys. Like I don't know if people have seen the world model examples that have been revealed lately. Basically, you know how we have video LLMs where or not video LLMs, video generation nowadays where I can give an image and have it turn into a video. Well, there's things being developed right now where you start with like a clip or an image and it gets turned into a video, and then you give directions for movement and it starts to generate what would likely be next to see. So if I have like a room and I turn towards the window, it's generating everything probabilistically till I see that window, and then it generates what's outside the window and I can step out the window, and it's literally generating the world as I go. This technology is being developed right now, and while there's a limitation in how much it can remember, so I might turn around and now it's something completely different. Once we solve that, we're effectively able to generate worlds as we interact with them. And that's literally what we're doing in our minds when we're playing RPGs. So that removes the meaningful choice problem. So once we can do that, you can play GTA 3 as a mailman, because I could then start the game, tell the game console, the conversation-wise, I want to play a mailman, make me a mailman. You make my missions have to do with me delivering mail. Now the game will model the world that way because it can. And as I play through the game and I interact with NPCs, we have an LLM that understands the context, the state of the world, like the GM does, and responds to you in a conversation in a way consistent with what it knows about the state of the world. Now you literally have replicated the behavior and experience of an RPG. That's going to be possible. And we're like on the precipice. I think this is going to change gaming forever because now anything can be an RPG, at least it's digitally mediated.
There's also like modding games. Like I'm sure there is a mod for GTA 3 that lets you play as a mailman and gives you mail delivery missions and stuff.
I'm just gonna stop this here. It's not GTA 3, all right? GTA 3 was the overhead, like that's like, it wasn't until Grand Theft Auto 4 that we started getting into like the fully immersive world.
Okay.
And I was talking about GTA 5.
Okay, my bad. I'm sure there's mods for GTA 5 where you can play a mailman and go deliver stuff. In addition to all the mods that add horse sticks to everything. Like, yeah, I guess that's another way to approach RPGs, not with horse sticks, but with like modding games.
Is the thing that we're really trying to break down though, is it what is an RPG or what is a TTRPG?
I think what I'm saying is that there are these 5 criteria that help you explain what a role-playing experience is, role-playing game experience. So a TTRPG is a role-playing game that's done on pen and paper, right? What I'm saying is with these 5 principles, you can distinguish now a digitally mediated role-playing game, which doesn't exist yet, but could be possible.
Right now with current technology, and you know, that won't last for long, but I think you have video games that just is a first and foremost, because that already puts the constraints on that you can't just do anything. And then, same thing, like board games is a different set of constraints because you're actually now limited to actual physical concepts and what you can, it depends on what the mechanics are, of course. But then whereas TTRPGs are completely
meaningful choice is not a problem for them.
Nothing is impossible.
Use your imagination.
I hope that diving into this, like as frustrating it can be for those of us who are not interested in the particulars, they're tools, right? Again, the reason why I come up with these principles as a concept is because it's a testing tool. It's a way to really know, okay, does this activity we're participating in, the gradient of an activity, how closely does it match to this thing we're trying to experience? Because when I pick up a role-playing game, the kind that I love, right? I want a certain experience. I don't want to have to make optimal choices like in a board game, right? I don't want to control an avatar in a way that I'm restricted by the game engine. And I'm not trying to please an audience who's watching me. Like, that's not why I'm playing the game. I'm playing, at least for me, and as our Plus in particular, because I want to fulfill a narrative archetype that I had in mind. I want to be the wizard who regains his powers or the paladin who saves, his loved one. And that's what this game is going to give me from experience. And so that's why I think these names can be important, because I know on the tin, that's the experience I'm going to get out of it. And we can call it whatever we want. We could call it, the docking games.
There we go.
The point is that we have these tools to know that I'm going to get some docking out of the game.
Proper docking. No.
Proper docking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we didn't even talk about role-playing in the bedroom.
It's our Patreon exclusive episode.
Role-playing games in the bedroom, they're conversations. You can adopt the role, right? You got a lot of choices. But do the game mechanics model the actions? Yeah. And I assume there's some narrative fulfillment.
I assume, says Daniel. You can follow us at OSR Plus on YouTube or join our Discord at osrplus.com. If you want to support us, visit our Patreon, patreon.com/OSR Plus for early access to our content and premium access to our digital tools. See you next time.